All right, welcome back to our daily read aloud, The Wild Robot Escapes. We have just barely started the book, and we know at the very beginning, Roz was dropped off to a farm. And who is her new family? Madeline?
Oh, I forget, but I remember one thing she stepped in poop and then slipped and fell on the ground.
Okay, so that was later. Let's start at the beginning. Who does she live with now? Zoe?
I was not here.
Okay, so who does she live with? Someone that was here that can help us review. Quentin?
The farmers.
Good, thank you. She lives with the Sharifs. So there's a Mr. Sharif. He has two children, Jad and Jaya. They have a dog named Oscar. And what about the mom? What do we know about her? Noah?
She passed away.
She passed away. So the farm is in big need of repairs.
Make it so cool.
All right, sorry about that. So the mom has passed away. The farm needs a lot of repairs. That's why they got a Roz robot. And Roz is hanging out with the cows. Why are the cows thinking Roz is a bit different than normal? Because the cows are like, what is this? Angie?
Because she can talk to animals.
She can talk to the animals. So she is mooing with the cows, right? That's how she would talk to cows. And then she meets a goose. Now, what did the goose have to say to her? This was fairly important. Emma?
She was Okay, so Roz was talking to the goose about White Bill.
Mm-hmm.
And if the goose's flock ever comes across White Bill, then she'll send them away.
Yeah, so we've got a little bit of hope, right? The flock is not part of Bright Bill's flock. They don't know Bright Bill, but they're like, hey, we'll keep spreading the word. If we can find that flock, we'll tell her where you live. Noah?
And he said it's not likely they're going to come here.
Right. Yes, this would be way out of their path, so they probably won't fly over this naturally. So, kind of a problem. However, at least another flock of geese is going to start spreading the word. All right. And that was about the last thing that we read. So chapter 12 is the homesick robot. Oh, one more thing to mention. Who can track Roz at all times? Abby? Sharif. Mr. Sharif. Okay? So he can always see where she is. Angie, last thing.
If it says the sick robot, robots can't get sick.
It's true. It's true. But this is homesick. So what does homesick mean? It's a little different than being sick. Emma, what's homesick mean?
Get back home.
Yeah, kind of like how I was feeling by the end of spring break. I was ready to be home. Chapter 12, the homesick robot. We all feel homesick at one time or another. Even the robot felt something like homesickness. Roz belonged with her son and her friends on her island. She was determined to find her way back there. But how? If the robot was seen doing anything unusual, Mr. Sharif might have her destroyed. Roz had to be careful. So she calmly went about her farm work day in and day out. But all the while, the homesick robot was secretly planning her escape. Chapter 13, the electronic signal. Yes?
I don't think that Mr.
Sharif.
Sharif would have her destroyed because he needs her.
True. All right, the electronic signal. Beep, 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 beep. A message was flashing on Roz's computer. The drone was reporting that gusty winds had sent it spiraling into the neighbor's bean field. So the robot grabbed the big, heavy toolbox and marched out to clean up the mess. Roz found the flying machine upside down with its landing gear poking up above the rows of leafy plants. It had some scrapes and scratches, but no major damage. She flipped it over, brushed it off, and tightened a few screws. Then she said, "Return to Hilltop Farm." The engine started buzzing, and the machine lifted off the ground and flew home. As Roz marched back, she cut through a strip of forest that separated the two farms. There were trees and ferns and rocks and shrubs and small forest animals. It was a little piece of wilderness. And suddenly, the robot was thinking of that wild island she missed so much. Someday, she would try to run away and return to her true home. Was this the moment for her escape? Could it be as easy as sneaking off through the trees? No, it couldn't be that easy. Ahead on the other side of the trees, Mr. Sharif was sitting in his pickup truck watching Roz. Because of the robot's electronic signal, he knew she had stepped off the property, and he had raced out there to see what she was up to. Roz marched over to the truck, and Mr. Sharif leaned out his window. He had a serious expression on his face. "Don't ever leave the property without my permission. Understand?" "I understand," said Roz. She understood all right. She understood that she was always being watched. She understood that she was trapped on Hilltop Farm. Chapter 14, The Sad Truth. That night, while everyone else was sleeping, Roz stayed up with her computer and researched sneaky subjects. She looked at diagrams for her own body, and for maps of the area, and for any news that might help her escape. But the robot found nothing. The computer only let her access information about farming. She was cut off from the outside world. It was clear that if Roz wanted to escape from her new life, she would need help. But the cows didn't know how to escape, and Mr. Sharif would never let his robot leave. Who would possibly help Roz run away from the farm? Any predictions? Zoe?
How did she get to the farm?
She got fixed at the robot factory, and then a truck just dropped her off in a crate. So it kind of started the way the island started. She was in a crate, they opened it up, and she said, "Hello, I am Rosam Unit 7134. Yep. Liam?
I've got one question and the answer. I think it's gonna be like the little children,
Okay.
maybe. And is this like the actual like main character Roz?
Yep. Chloe, what do you think?
I think the dog's gonna help her escape because the dog doesn't like her.
Okay. Maybe the dog wants her gone. Noah?
I think the two kids.
Okay. All right. Well, we had a couple predictions of the kids. One of the dog. Hayden, last one.
Kids or like a group or maybe Brightville will come.
Okay. All right. Eric, real fast.
I'm predicting that the kids, he will do their homework.
Okay.
And then he will go.
All right. So maybe they'll help each other out. Okay. Chapter 15 is called The Children. As time rolled by, Roz saw less and less of Mr. Sharif, but she saw more and more of the children. They were shy at first. The robot might look up from the pasture and see Jad peeking around the corner of the barn, or see Jaya spying from the branches of a tree. But the children were growing bolder. And then one day, Roz marched into the workshop and heard giggling. She walked to the closet in the back, opened the door, and there was Jaya, smiling and trying not to laugh. "I'm hiding from my brother," whispered the girl. "Please close the door." The robot closed the door. A minute later, Jad ran in, flushed and out of breath. "Hey, Roz, have you seen Jaya?" The robot just stared. "I know she's in here," said Jad, and he began prowling around the room. Shh. He searched under the work table and behind the tool chest and between all the bulky workshop machines. Finally, he marched up to Roz and said, "I order you to show me where my sister is hiding." The robot pointed to the closet. Jad smiled mischievously and tiptoed over. Then he flung open the door and screamed, "Found you!" "No fair," Jaya whined. "Russ showed you where I was hiding." The girl scowled at the robot. "That wasn't very nice, Roz, but you can make it up to me by playing hide and seek. Count to 100 and then try to find my brother and me, okay?" There was a brief pause. Then the robot said, "Okay." Jaya and Jad squealed with delight and scampered out the door as Roz started counting. The robot's sensitive ears listened carefully to the children outside. She heard quick footsteps crunching across the driveway. She heard a giggle and the sounds of tree branches shaking. She heard a grunt and the sounds of hay bales being shoved aside. When the robot finished counting, it took her exactly 5 seconds to find Jaya up in the tree. It took her another 8 seconds to find Jad in the hayloft. "Wow, Roz is really good at seeking," said Jad as he picked hay from his hair. Jaya snorted. "Yeah, well, let's just see how good she is at hiding." All right, do you guys think she's pretty good at hiding?
Yes.
What has caused her in her previous life to be a good hider? Madeline?
The little stick bug and she camouflaged.
Yes.
Rico, she kept on hiding.
Yep, she learned how to camouflage by looking at the stick bug and other animals on the island. Roz was even better at hiding. While the children counted, the robot silently slipped away, and an hour later, they still hadn't found her. The siblings stood in the driveway defeated. "We give up, Roz," shouted Jad. "You win," shouted Jaya. The junk pile beside the barn started moving, and Roz appeared. The robot had been sitting there all along, perfectly camouflaged among the scrap metal from old farm machines. The next time we play, you have to let one of us win, said Jaya to Roz. And the next time they played, Roz did. The robot enjoyed having the children around. They brought a little lightness into her world, and she hoped to bring a little lightness into theirs. Life must have been dark since their mother passed away. However, Roz had another reason for wanting the children around. She needed them. Her only chance of ever returning home was if Jaya and Jad could find it in their hearts to help her escape. But this was a delicate situation. If Roz tried too hard, the children might say something to their father. If she didn't try hard enough, she might be stuck on that farm forever. Chapter 16, The Robot's Dream. Cows grazed in the pasture. Wind rustled through the tall grass. Clouds drifted over the fields. Farm machines rumbled and buzzed. Milk floated into bottles. Bottles were packed into boxes. Boxes were loaded onto the milk truck. The truck drove away full and returned empty. Children romped around with their dog. A man sat at his desk. A robot dreamed of escape. Chapter 17, The Birds. Hilltop Farm was home to many birds. Swallows were always swooping low over the grass and picking off insects. Crows cawed from the fields like a gang of hecklers. At night, owls glided above the countryside, silently searching for furry little meals. The robot was stuck on that farm, but the birds were free to go wherever they pleased. Lucky birds. One day, Roz was standing in the pasture, admiring a hawk as he soared through the sky, when the cows began grazing around her. Their slow footsteps crunched in the grass, their teeth chewed and chewed, their tails flicked at flies. All the while, Roz stood there staring up at the hawk. And then came Lily's soft voice. So Lily is one of the cows. What are you thinking about, Roz? The robot turned to the calf. I am thinking about Brightbill, she said. It was not so long ago that I was watching my son soar through the sky. That seems like another lifetime. You must hate your new life, said Annabelle. I can't say that I blame you. Farming looks like such grueling work. Actually, I like farming, said Roz. Somehow it feels right to spend long hours working with machines and tools and crops and animals. But I miss my old life on the island. Tess had a mouthful of dandelions, but that didn't stop her from speaking. Maybe you should try to start thinking of this farm as your home. That island is awfully far away. There's a good chance you'll never make it back there. Don't say that, cried Lily. Roz just has to make it home. She needs to be with Brightbill and her friends. Tess is right, said Roz. I may never make it home. If I were a bird like my son, I could fly home all on my own anytime I wanted. But I am only a robot. Nobody spoke after that. The cows went back to grazing, and Roz went back to admiring the hawk. Her eyes followed the bird as he soared through the sky, free to go wherever he pleased. Chapter 18, The Entertaining Robot. The children wandered out behind the farm buildings, through a clearing, and over to an old oak tree. It was the same tree their father had climbed when he was a boy. Mr. Sharif's initials were carved into the bark at the bottom of a long list of initials. For generations, all the Sharifs had carved their initials into that tree, going back to the ancestors who first built the farm. Someday, the children would add their initials to the list. Beneath the leafy branches was a scattering of acorns. Jed cleared a spot for himself, sat down, and pulled a small computer from his pocket, while Jaya climbed above. The siblings spent the afternoon there, lazing around the tree, until the robot marched past, carrying the big, heavy toolbox. What you doing, Roz? Called Jad. The robot stopped. The drone has crash-landed again, she said. I am going to fix it. Do you need any help? I do not need any help. I'm bored, said Jaya, her legs dangling above her brother's head. Can you do something fun, Roz? The robot put down her toolbox and said, What would you like me to do? I don't know, said Jaya, thinking hard. Can you do a backflip? Yes, I can do a backflip. A grin spread across the girl's face. Roz, I order you to do a backflip. At that, Roz crouched, and then she leaped into the air, flipped backward, and gently landed on her feet. A perfect backflip. Jad put his computer away. Jaya jumped down from the branch. The children were impressed. What else can you do, said Jad. Can you juggle? Yes, I can juggle. I order you to juggle, some of these acorns. Roz walked up to the tree, picked 3 large acorns from the ground, and began juggling them in perfect rhythm. Jaya studied the robot's movements, and then began tossing acorns in the air as well. The first one went a little too high, the next one went a little too far, and soon they all went tumbling back into the grass. Do you know any jokes? Said Jed. Why did the chicken cross the road? Never mind. Jed scratched his head. Can you tell us a story? What kind of a story would you like to hear? A robot story, said Jed. An animal story, said Jaya. How about a robot and animal story, said Roz. The children smiled at each other. Then they sat against the tree and looked up at the robotic storyteller. All right. Any idea what type of story she might tell? Eric? All right, let's see. Once upon a time, so she's saying this is a true story or not?
True.
She started with once upon a time, so is that usually pretend?
Yeah.
All right. Once upon a time, there was a robot who lived alone on an island, Roz began. She spent her time wandering across mountains and forests and meadows, and then something terrible happened. Rocks fell and the robot tumbled off a cliff. She survived the fall, but sadly, the rocks killed 2 geese and smashed 4 of their eggs. The robot stood there staring at the poor goose family until she heard a tiny voice peeping from somewhere nearby. She followed the peeping voice and discovered a perfect goose egg sunk in the dirt. The robot carefully picked up the egg and carried it away. And when the gosling hatched from its shell, the first thing he saw was the robot looking back. "Mama, Mama!" he peeped. The gosling thought the robot was his mother. And from that day on, she was. The robot adopted the gosling as her son, and together they made a funny, little, happy family. The end. The children sat there and thought about Roz's strange story. Then they looked up at her and said, "What happened next?" All right, and that is where we'll stop today. All right, we will see you tomorrow.